Well, hello there again.
What's up?
What's going down?
You're on the recovery pod.
Hey, I like it.
Yeah, so did you wanna continue or did you want to do something different?
I don't care. Just let it roll.
Okay.
What was I thinking about? What works for you in recovery? So, like, I was listening to someone on Somebody's podcast the other day, which is fire. Go
Mm-hmm.
check it out. And she had like a viewpoint where she didn't like meetings and stuff. She's just like, oh, I went for first little while in the beginning. I don't remember if she was like, I don't like identifying as an addict or whatever, but she made it seem like that's what I needed then, and this is what I need now. So, like, I don't know. I thought it would be kind of cool to talk about
Yeah.
the multifacets of recovery because it's not just any one thing.
So I've actually been thinking about this today. So the thing is I'm always trying to get answers to everything and just figure everything out. And I feel so much safer when I feel like I know everything. And I feel like, so what is addiction? So to me, it's when you're trying to, you know, escape your mind, basically, when you're trying to, what does substance abuse do? What does any addiction do? It just turns off your mind. You're able to focus on something other than yourself, other than the thoughts and feelings that you're having, escape yourself. And, especially if you hate yourself. And so then I'm thinking, so what if a person undergoes a lot of work that they've done on themselves? Like they've gotten to a point where they have learned how to be present. They have gotten to a point where they learn to love themselves to the point of, you know, just feeling okay. Kind of like on the level of, a non-addict who, doesn't feel the need to escape into that and who is able to manage their emotions. Could they ever reach that level? And, what that would look like to an addict reaching that wouldn't necessarily mean that they can go out and drink casually or, whatever. It's just reaching to the point of feeling like you don't need that anymore, ever, to feel okay. You learn how to feel okay without it, and you don't even you don't want it, you don't need it. Because I know I still struggle when I have days where I feel really like shit. Like I feel like the whole world just, well, I haven't had that in a long time, but I'm not putting it past me to have that again at some point. That's part of like humility or whatever. So I feel like I want to use, but I'm able to catch that, and I'm able to work through it and just kind of backtrack, see why it is that I feel this way, what's making me want to do this, and then see how I can, it all boils down to just allowing myself to feel this and accept that feeling. It all boils down to being able to accept emotions, to just accept the feeling of stress or overwhelmingness and just let yourself sit in it.
Right.
Because that was my problem. Was I would either completely numb my feelings and not allow myself to feel, or I would feel them so heavily that I just want to escape. And so, and I don't know, because it's it's one of those things that I'm still having a hard time figuring out. Because then I thought, what is I started thinking about just myself in life in general. I'm always striving for perfection. I'm always striving to be the best that I can be in everything. Everything. I'm always pushing myself to the hardest. And I'm thinking, what will happen when I perfect every single thing? What will happen when I am good at like everything I do and I'm just so awesome and great and everybody's pleased by me? Like, wouldn't I get just bored? Wouldn't I just like not? I just, I don't know. You know what I mean? So I guess what I'm trying to say is I think we can get to a point where we can help ourselves, but we're still gonna like continue the inner self work because there's a lot. There's a lot each and every one of us has to work on in reality. And as soon as we get done working on one thing, another pops out and another and another. And it's kind of like a never ending cycle. And just, it's all about just accepting yourself for where you're at in the moment and, you know, just kind of working on whatever the thing is currently because we all have a purpose. I feel like the purpose of life is just to work on, you're given a certain challenge with yourself. I know my biggest challenge is just basically learning to be okay with myself, but um and we have to like work on that, like, I don't know, maybe our whole life. So I don't know, like, are we ever able to get to a point where we don't need the program, where we don't need meetings, and maybe it's like, I'm sorry if I'm talking a lot. I just have a lot to say on this.
No, you good.
Maybe it's like
I'm just chilling.
kind of kind of just like a reminder. Okay, so actually, no, here's a great example. I have been doing so much shadow work, so much, you know, like just working on my defects and stuff that I remember prior I was good at practicing presence. I was very good at, well, not very good, but I was like able to be present sometimes. And, you know, and ever since all that work that I've done on myself, I almost forgot how to be present. I have to reread Eckhart Tolle. I have to reread Don Miguel Ruiz because I lost that knowledge. I kind of lost it a little bit. So I have to remind myself. I have to go back to it. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a meeting, but it has to be something to keep us in check with the things that we have like acquired, like, you know, knowledge and spiritual principles and shit. Like, if we're constantly up our own asses and we're just like focused on something, then we can easily drift away from spiritual principles, I feel like. So if we're constantly keeping at it, we're able to we're able to kind of just keep that, you know? Like, we can only keep what we have by giving it away too. So that would be another way of, because when you get to a point in a meeting where, you know, you've done all the steps or whatever, and, you know, you're very later, like, you have a lot of years under your belt, you come to meetings to help others, basically. So there's got to be some sort of a form of keeping that in your life. So if I would have just read a page of Eckhart Tolle every single day, I wouldn't have lost that the way I did. I mean, I didn't necessarily lose it completely. Now I feel like I'm justifying myself, but
I'm just watching you dance and go in circles. It's so funny.
I'm done.
You went
I
straight
can't.
to like, I'm gonna graduate one day and move on, but then I don't know. No, like I dig it. I dig it all. Like,
Uh,
so much to touch on.
I know.
So yeah, I feel you where, coming in to recovery, let's just use NA as an example. That's the basics. Like, okay, I'm here. I'm admitting my powerlessness over my addiction because this concept is so foreign to me. I'm trying to come to grips with what a higher power is and what it is for me. I'm doing my inventory to dig up all my past that haunts me. I'm making my amends to rectify as much as I can so I don't have to continue this loop of guilt and shame. I'm passing the message along and keeping myself in check. And 10, 11, and 12, you know, I feel like NA is a great starting point. And I don't mean that to say like there should be an end to it. I feel like it depends on the person. If you're going to a meeting just for yourself and you're just take, then yes, I think you could advance. But a huge part of the program is like what you just said, is giving back, being there for the next person. And I'll say, like, I value mindfulness and the concepts of like refuge recovery or just this spiritual self-help stuff today more than I do NA. If I had to choose one or the other, I would choose my mindfulness path because that keeps me above ground and in check on all the underlying things that led me to addiction. I know I'm powerless over drugs. I know that if I chose to casually drink, it would more than likely become an issue for me. I know that no level of mindfulness is going to give me a green light to use casually because that's just, I'm going to lose all of that mindfulness and all of that serenity really fast. And it's going to suck me right in. And I already know this from experience and seeing other people go. But like, there's a lot of people I talk to who like yoga becomes their path or some type of physical fitness. And I'll kind of relate it like this. Like, you could go work out for a while and go on a diet and say, okay, well, I've worked out for 2 years. I haven't eaten fast food in a while, so I'm good. I don't need to work out anymore. Like, because then what happens? You're back around other people who aren't working
Yeah.
out. You're back around other people who are eating junk food. And I don't care if you go hang out with people in McDonald's all the time, you're going to eventually pick up. So it depends on your surroundings. Like, I believe people could go get clean by whatever means, through a program or whatever, move on if they truly know that drugs and alcohol are not going to fit in their life and they've given up the romance dream of using again one day. If they just move on from that, change their behaviors, change their surroundings, I'm sure that they can make it, because I've seen people do it. However, if we're being realistic, there's too many people who are negative, who are casually using in too many different circles to just assume someone's going to be away from it all. And when you're around it, and it's been 5 years since you've had a drink and you've hung out at the party a few times and seen people manage their alcohol, it starts looking possible for you again. And if you don't have a support network to turn to remember where you came from, to hear these ongoing messages of gratitude just for today, you don't see the people come and go who go out and experiment with themselves, go and come back looking like a train wreck. You don't see that new addict coming in who's never had a taste of recovery who looks like shit because they've just been like ran ragged through the streets. That all those things are what you're going to continue to get from some type of meeting. And I think that's why we see people with 10, 15, 20, 30 years still come. But for me, it's also, I don't want to just be clean. I want the serenity. And I can go a couple weeks without a meeting. I've done it before. I don't feel like I'm going to use, but I don't have my serenity. I don't have the serenity I have when I'm involved. And it comes from a lot of that, from seeing people and really being reminded, like, we don't have many first step meetings in our group. And we've had a few in the last couple months. And man, they really remind me of how I felt when I got clean, because I'm kind of going back to that mindset. I'm going back to how I felt because I forget. And a lot of what turns me away nowadays is that I don't want to be a slave to a substance. But when I do a first step meeting and I really remember how toxic I was and how stuck on a substance I was, it comes back more vividly. And I think if I wasn't going to meetings, I wouldn't have that. I wouldn't have those moments of like real, fresh, intense reminders. And I also wouldn't get that feeling of helping out the next person. I wouldn't feel like I belonged somewhere as much. So it's kind of tricky. Like I feel like it's obviously different for every person, but I definitely feel like there needs to be some root, like you were saying, like you need to have something. You need to have somewhere to turn to that keeps you in a positive light. And I think it's really important to have a support system of like-minded people. So I'm not just listening to the casual users and I'm not listening to the unconscious people because their influence will become my influence. You know what I mean?
Yeah, as long as you got at least one person that you can talk to. Because I get meeting feelings when I talk to somebody in recovery, like in general, like because when we're talking, we're relating to each other and we make each other feel like we're not alone. That's a big thing for me, is feeling like I'm not alone. So if I have at least another person who's like, yeah, man, this sucks too, like it's cool. And then just kind of just saying a couple things here and there, just like reminding, just like little things like, I don't know, like, oh, just for today or whatever. It's like, oh yeah, just for today, because I'll forget. I'll forget certain concepts. And as long as there's, just any sort of like human connection and, like church goers that do it like every week or whatever, it's kind of another form of feeling connected. So
Definitely.
like it's like their little meeting. Cause they're addicted, quote unquote, I don't know, to sinning or whatever. And then just like being able to,
I am powerless over my sinning.
being able to talk to people about it. And like, I guess I never really understood the concept of a pastor, but I guess that would kind of be equivalent to somebody who's like been clean for 30 years in a meeting or something. So
it's just like an open talk every week. Like,
yeah, kind of like an open talk. So that I feel like any human being needs that. I feel, but for addicts especially, because our going downhill can lead us to dying. For me, anyways. Now,
right.
a regular non-addict, whatever their form of behavior that comes along with going downhill may not be as harmful, so it doesn't really matter. It's not as much stress to just keep afloat or whatever. Because people mostly just really choose to go to church, but addicts, it's like, man, I gotta go. Like, I need this.
Well,
So,
I think the good thing about the difference between people going to church and people going to meetings is that, and I don't mean this in any bad way against church, and maybe church, some of them have this concept, but like when you're going to church, you're just listening to one person and you're buying into a set of ideas, but there's not a whole lot of like sharing on your part. You know what I mean? So maybe, I don't know, I'm sure a lot of people after the fact like get together and they talk about the good sides, which is great. But what we get so much from our meetings is that we come and we tell on ourselves and we talk about our shortcomings and we talk about our struggles and get input. Like if we went to meetings and it was just a preach session all the time, like this is the way to do it. These are all the things we live by. This is our code, blah, 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 blah. It would be good, but it wouldn't be the same as all of us going and having that mix of confessions and, you know, cries for help and epiphanies and, you know, reiterating the basic. Like I love people that say the one liners. Like I love like Ed, where he's just like hardcore NA, like old school sometimes, where he just, oh man, I love coming to this meeting, and you got to get a sponsor, you got to work the steps, reach out to someone and recover, all the basic things that like almost would be in like an NA speech if someone wrote one. Like,
Or
that is so important.
above ground
What?
sucking air.
Hey,
I love that
above
one.
ground suck it. Dude, I love people with their sayings, man. Like fucking Holly, and she's just like, I'm alive and clean and grateful to be at a meeting. Like this one dude would always be like, oh, I heard it so many times I forgot. He's like, hey, my name's this. I'm glad to be in a meeting on a Friday night and I'm not drinking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was like this, like one or two liners, but they say it every time verbatim. And I almost feel like I wish I had one because
Same.
it kind of puts people into a groove. It almost like throws your brain off track. Like, what am I going to say? And you just get the ball rolling. But then it becomes like this thing where I'm like, okay, when do I start? Because if I just go ahead like tomorrow and started with this new saying, the first few times I say it, people are gonna be like, oh, now he wants to get himself a little saying. Like, not that that matters, but like, and then what would be the perfect saying? What's my saying? Like, oh, it's just, yeah, I could never do it.
I was going to start mine because I feel what like what I wanted to say, but it doesn't come out as naturally like my thing. Or I think I did that on one of the podcasts and it came out just really bad.
Yeah, it was pretty bad.
Thanks. I really needed you to tell me that when I already said it myself.
It was great. I loved it. No,
Stop
I'm saying it was bad that you
for
stopped.
a second. Please.
Hey, what's going down?
Yeah, that one is like horrible.
Oh, please. That's the only reason people listen. They just listen to the intro and then they stop.
I said that I am here to speak my truth. Because, like, I really like the concept of, because in Don Miguel Ruiz's book, he talks about us being messengers to each other. Because, when we get down into like the higher self level, into the mindful, aware parts of ourselves, whatever that comes out of us, it is the truth, and we all share it with one another. So it's like we're kind of like messengers from God. Like he is a messenger from God, and then I hear that message, and then I pass it on to like my friend. So I'm kind of like a messenger. So we're like each other's angels of messengers of truth. So I really like the concept of saying like, oh, I'm here to speak my truth. Like I'm here to, say something that like that's a message to somebody, at least one person, even if like most of the shit that I say is probably dumb and annoying and repetitive, which I'm sure that's how I am half the time. But if there's like one little thing that I say and it gets like one person, that's me already being like an angel, like a messenger. So I try to say something like that and it just comes out like it's forced. So I give up.
It's weird, but it kind of comes naturally after a while. Like when we first started the podcast and I'm just like, hey, what's going down? Like I felt really corny saying it at first. And lately I just dig it. I'm just like, hey, oh, what's going down? You know what I mean? Like I don't even think about it. And it's like, I'm sure it'll be the same thing. Cause like I've always, when I listen to podcasts and I'm like, oh, they're like, hey, don't forget to like and subscribe. Like, check us out on YouTube. You can follow us on Spotify, blah, blah, blah. Like, it seems so cringy and corny to me. But, like, I see people do that a lot. And I forgot what I was listening to the other day. But it was, like, one of those things like, hey, don't forget to do this. And I was like, oh, yeah. Like, you know what I mean? It's something I listen to and something I would totally do, but wasn't thinking about it. But them telling me was like, oh, hey, why don't I go do that? But it, like, seems just so weird to me, but the point of it is it becomes more comfortable and people need to be kind of asked what you want them to do. Like, hey, share this podcast with a friend, or hey, leave a comment. Let us know if you're even listening, or if these are just like fucking bots that are listening to us. Like, I know Eric's listening, but I don't know if people in fucking like Turkey are listening or wherever we keep getting a download from every week. But hey, if you understand English, man, shout out to you. But like, yeah, I feel like it comes over time. Like even coming to meetings at first, just being like, "Hey, my name's Steven and I'm an addict," or saying like the Serenity Prayer even out loud, like that was hard for me at first. Not it just because I'm so special that like people are judging me and focused on me while I'm doing it in a group full of
Mm-hmm.
people. You know what I mean? And it was just awkward and weird, and I'd probably mumble it under my breath or just barely move my lips or something until I was just like, and just fucking go. Like, and then it becomes easier. So, but yeah, coming up with like a little slogan or something, it's like, it probably just has to happen, you know?
Yeah, if you have to think about something, if your mind gets involved, it's usually not. It doesn't end up good. So
Yeah.
for those people, it's probably naturally. And we just have to accept the fact that, like, we haven't gotten to that point yet. And there's nothing wrong with that. We don't have to be
Yeah.
the best. We don't have to be, comparing ourselves to every single person and measuring up to that. Like, oh, I like how this person's like that. I want to be that. It's like, just be how you are. I mean, I'm sure there are things that we do that other people admire. So,
Yeah, like everything.
oh God, Leo placements.
No, but like the other day, I think it was the last meeting I went to or the one before that where I felt like I was saying some shit and I just wasn't, or at least nobody gave me the little
Mm-hmm.
reactions. But then like the one meeting where I was talking about like smoking in my car for that split second and how bad it gave me cravings to smoke in my
Oh
car
yeah.
again, even though it'd been like 4 months. Everybody was like, "Oh my God, what a great share. You just would say it so much." And I'm like, "What?" Like, I was just talking about fucking how bad I've wanted to smoke in my car since I sat down in my car with a cigarette for 30 seconds. You know what I mean? And I guess it was like one of them things where I really didn't think there was no part of me that was like, I'm about to say something that's going to get the head nods, or I'm about to say something that someone's going to click with. I was literally just 100% truly sharing without any part of my mind involved. And I guess that authenticity is what connects people because every time I try to say, like, you could be going through something and I could have like a good solution that worked for me. But if I put any type of thought into it beforehand, it literally comes out so bad. It just there's no flow to it. I'm overthinking it, almost like those meetings where you're in your head the whole time, like, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? Then you start talking, and instead of freely talking and going with a flow, you're like, what was that one thing I was thinking? And then you lose yourself, and it just comes out weird. And I don't know. That's luckily I don't do that anymore, but I used to do it really bad in the beginning, like really overthinking, like, what am I going to say? It has to be on the level of last time because last time everybody was like, "Oh my God, you're a fucking god," and I'm like, "Oh yes, I'm so great." Like, I just don't even give a shit anymore. It's cool though, like when people are like, "Oh hey, that was some good shit." I'm like, "Oh cool, thanks, man. Whatever."
Yeah, it's because you speak your truth. When your mind is out of the picture, it's basically your higher self or whatever. But yeah, I used to have that really bad too. But lately, I've just been sharing what's been going on with me, like what I'm currently. I'm always like a fucking scientist studying parts of myself. I'm just like, yeah, so my new research says, and I'm just like, as if like everybody just like is listening and taking notes and shit, like I'm in a lecture. It's like, dude, calm.
No, it's more like a season of episode. Like, what's going on this week? Last week on the Chronicles of Anna. Like, yo.
Yeah, so last episode, just a quick recap, and uh yeah.
I think it's great. Like, I think you're always so like pure and honest and vulnerable, and you're like, I don't know. I remember that one time a few weeks ago where you're just like, I just don't fit in. I'm different. I'm weird, and it's like, dude, you're giving like exactly what you're supposed to give, and you're not. You know, what would it be like if we were all in there only saying NA slogans, and we were all in there only talking about addiction and that's it. And if I was only talking about addiction, I wouldn't have nothing to say because most of the time I don't think about drugs. I don't have cravings anymore. And my life does not revolve around drugs like it did. My main goal is not to stay away from drugs because I don't hang out with people that do drugs. I don't crave them and I don't, think about them unless they're around to think about or my serenity is altered. Therefore, I focus on things that help keep my serenity in check. And that has to do with mindfulness and behavior and outlooks on life, like pretty much. So when I share at a meeting, I'm talking about behaviors, psychological outlooks, and shit like that. Because I think it's good for people to know that. Like, you got the people who are hardcore, like, work the steps, show up at meetings, blah, blah, blah. Great, because that needs to be heard. Then you got the people who are talking about their trauma triggers and stuff like that. Great, because somebody needs to hear that. And then you got people like me who are talking about your thought identification and, all the things that come along with the mind prison. And that's good for people to hear too. Everybody's going to take something different from the meeting. Just like there's times where I hear that basic as fuck NA slogan that I heard in my first day that I haven't thought of in a hot minute. And it's like, hey man, one day at a time. Like,
Oh, I almost forgot. Yeah.
I was living in next week.
Yeah, so that is, man, I just really needed to hear that. Like, because every single person brings something, and we all have our own little thing. Like, if we stick to our own authenticity, we have something. Each and every one of us has something. Even if it might feel like, oh man, I'm not like an NA old timer. Oh man, I'm not like a, big person on mindfulness, or I'm not like this. But you have like your own thing. Every single person does. As like once the person gets down to their like real like self, they definitely have something, even if it comes out different. But being able to hear those different perspectives, every time, because if you just keep like hearing the same thing over and over again, it's like, it's annoying. But just being able to hear a different perspective every time, like that's why. And I think that's why they do meetings where it's where it's a lot of people. It's not just like you're talking to one person from the program. Like, yeah, that'll work for like, it'll get you by like a couple of months or whatever. But that's why it's so good to have like a meeting with so many people, because then you get to hear so many different perspectives, and each and every one like sticks so much better. Like, I like, it's not just like when you're okay. So a great example, reading about spirituality and, awareness and stuff. If I just read Eckhart Tolle, I don't think that concept would stick as well, because I started reading different people, and same goes to you, I'm sure. Like, it stuck so much better because you're able to see different perspectives, different way of wording things. Like, even Don Miguel Ruiz's son, who wrote some books, he wrote about the same exact concept, but from his perspective, and his way made it stick even more in my brain. So I just, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, like Eckhart Tolle uses the correct terms. Like, this is your thoughts, this is your reality, this is your whatever. Don Miguel talks in his code, like, this is your dream, this is your metote, whatever, this is your angel messenger, this
Yeah.
is, and he just, it's saying the same thing, but in a different way. And depending on how you look at it, it's a different light. Like I remember when I first started reading the Four Agreements, it was like I truly started to see my life as a dream, not as like a sleep dream, but like, this is my story and I can truly make it whatever I want. And I liked that concept because it was like, I had this theory like in my addiction. So before my wokeness, but I never really implemented it or stood strong
Mm-hmm.
behind it. But it was like, I can change paths at any time. Like, I don't need to act as the role, my main character, that I don't have to act in that character that has been developed my whole life. Like, if I was some thug rapper who had to like be hard or cold or was jaded or what, you know what I mean? Like, all these things, to where if someone wanted to come up to me tomorrow and ask me for something, I have to stop and say, hold up, what would I do? Okay, because I got burned in the past, I can't loan people money. I can't be there for people because, hold up, he wasn't there for me one time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And turn around and say, well, my response is determined on what I would do. And what I would do is being determined by who my character is. And that is my ego, my self-image that I have collected and defined based on experience. So I like the dream thing because he's like, you can literally wake up tomorrow and paint a new dream. You can live a new life tomorrow. You can just do things differently. Now we have those deep rooted, like kind of grooves that are automatic behavior. You know, I wake up and I smoke a cigarette and I play my game.
Right.
I fucking fart around all day. Like, that's my automatic response because that's what I'm so used to doing. But I could get up tomorrow and go hike a mountain, or I can get up tomorrow and go plant a tree or play soccer.
Yeah,
Like, you
soccer.
know what I mean? Like, there's just there's no groove there for me. So it takes making a new path. And man, I love when I get on a new path, because even like coming into recovery, going to meetings and doing all these different things in my routine was a new path. And now it's my
Yeah.
path. Now it is my groove. But I did slowly drift back into some old paths. Like, I used to watch a lot of TV. Now I broke that one because like I don't sit here and just like watch TV all the time. I will admit my game has become quite
Mm-hmm.
the bit of a groove for me. Um, I, I'll rationalize it by saying it's not as bad as gamers or people who could even be considered people who like games. I definitely don't play that much, but it's enough of a groove for me where it puts me back into my lazy groove, my sitting on ass groove. Like, yeah, I'm not watching TV, but I'm sitting on ass still.
To you, it seems like it's a tool instead of just like making it your whole life. So there's a difference. Like, you use it as a tool to relax or
yeah,
zone, if you will. But a lot of people get so sucked into it where it becomes their life, and that's when it's a problem. So you don't really have a problem.
no, the dude I used to live with used to come home and play World of Warcraft every day. And like, that's all he did. Like, if he wasn't working, he was playing World of Warcraft. It was like, you know, I never really played, or was it World of Warcraft? One of them, maybe Final Fantasy. I don't know. One of them online multi games who like, where you have a character and you like are basically living this like digital life. I feel like people check into that and they think like, this is me to some degree. You know, this is my life here, and this human life is just, you know, my matrix or something.
Yeah, I mean, any addiction is basically escape from reality. So people utilize that as an escape because they don't like the way their life is. So they try to feel like they're more in control when they're playing a video game. They're in control of what's happening. They're in control of their image. So they get completely sucked into it. And it feels so much better to be playing the game and being in that reality versus the real reality where you feel like you're not in control. But like you said, this is our dream. We're the painters of this canvas. Like, at any time we could change things, and it's about just really, really understanding or just seeing or feeling it, have a feel for it that we are indeed in control. And I know I still struggle with that sometimes. I'm trying so hard to break that. I'm doing some things throughout the day where I normally would have to fight myself to do. I would have to, it'd be really hard for me to do because I feel like I can't. So then I'll just do it just to prove to myself that I can. And it feels so good afterwards. So I feel like getting to that is just by just doing those things and I don't know.
Yeah. I feel like the main thing too is being aware because like when I got clean in 2010, I binge watched TV like
Yeah.
bad. Like go to work. I didn't talk to anybody because I wasn't social. I was so checked out. Like, and a lot of times I always wanted to go back to my hole. Like I'd go to work and just, serve my time and literally just fiend to go back home just so I can check out of my life and watch whatever I was watching. But I would literally go home and just watch from the moment I got home from work till I passed out. Just checked all the way out. When I got done with one show, I'd download another, or I would watch something else, or I'd go back and start the whole series over again because I just could not be with myself. I could not face the pain of,
Yeah.
losing my children. I could not face the pain of my regrets of the past. I could not learn how to sit with being sober and not using because those moments were boring to me and they were I was really plagued by defects back then and no part of the program was appealing to me because I had a God problem at the time. So when I just looked at the steps, I was like, yep, nope, this isn't for me. But I didn't know what I was doing. Like I was doing those things, but it's not like I was sitting there like, you know what you're doing. You're just checking out a reality. It was just like, I feel like shit. I feel like shit when I'm with myself and I don't know what to do. So I know I feel better when I watch TV. So that's what I'm going to do always. Like it got to a point where I was even riding around with a portable DVD player in my car because I always needed to be checked into something like at all times. Because this is before like phones were like streaming
Mm-hmm.
YouTube and stuff. You know what I mean? Like it was before, like probably back in the 2G, but back in the dinosaur days. But yeah, I just remember those feelings and it was so bad. And I tried to tell my friend who was drinking pretty bad and he would just get off work, drink and watch anime all day. And I'm like, dude, I know, I feel like this is what you're doing cuz like this is what I did for a long time and he was just like, well, I'm okay with it cuz like that kept him hey, it's going
Can
down.
we can we stop?